Welcome to this demonstration of ProfoundUI JumpStart. Well, what is JumpStart? JumpStart is a code generation tool that will generate a number of different types of applications which you can then use as a starting point to create your specific application or program you're attempting to write. It'll generate the front end, the display, and also the back end code. At the moment we support two types of back-end languages, RPG and PHP. This demonstration is going to focus mainly on RPG. So JumpStart will create, of course, a rich display file for the front end, and the back-end code will be RPGLE, of course with the handler keyword for open access use. The format of code can be either the more modern Technology Refresh 7, where the H, F, D and C specs are all in free format, or you can choose the more traditional free format where just the C specs are in free format. The style of code that JumpStart generates is a modern coding style using best practices, for example using sub-procedures instead of subroutines. It uses data structures for all the I/O to the display file, it uses embedded SQL, and of course, most importantly, it's human readable. The code is well laid out using good field names, easy to understand and to follow. And this is important because the intention is that you would modify the program for your own specific use. So it's human readable, easy to use. So after you've generated a program, which is a display file and the RPG, you can then go, of course, use the Visual Designer to modify the rich display file for your own purpose. This may be, for example, adding an extra field or extra buttons for extra functionality. And of course, you would modify the generated RPG code using whatever editor tool you would use. Rational tool, RDI is preferable. You can still use SEU if you're using that at the moment. SEU is not being updated anymore, and the syntax checker will not recognize the new format, but it will still work. So how does all this work? We ship a number of templates with JumpStart. The templates, it's a template for a display file and the RPG code. So these templates are what JumpStart uses to format the layout of the display file and the RPG code that's generated. Now these templates can be copied and customized for your own purpose. For example, if you are wanting to generate an application for end users in a language other than English, you could copy the display file template in 5 or 10 minutes, modify all the labels and the button descriptions to, for example, Spanish, and then save that as a separate template. Then you could then use that template for JumpStart to generate an application for Spanish end users. So these templates are shipped as an example. They can be modified to suit. So the three types of applications JumpStart will generate. The first is a subfile based over a nominated database file you have specified. And of course you can add functionality to view, edit, add or delete a record. These are all optional and configurable. There's a second type is a data entry to enter a single record into a file, and a lookup to view a single record from a file. These, of course, are small applications that you would use on an existing application to get you up and running quickly. So JumpStart is part of the ProfoundUI suite, and therefore it's browser-based, and it will run in any standard browser. And of course, the applications that it generates will also run in any standard browser. So let's go ahead and look at JumpStart in more detail. The best way to start JumpStart is from the welcome screen here. Start JumpStart. So here at the top we have the application type, subfile, data entry and lookup. Subfile is the most complex and that covers the other two, so we'll use this as the option. The subfile type can be load all or page at a time. Load all for a limited number of records. The RPG limit for load all is 9,999. Realistically, you would not want to load any more than a couple of thousand records, because in a rich display file, all of the records are loaded to the browser when the screen loads. So a couple of thousand is probably the maximum you'd want for load all. If you generated an application load all and the RPG output more than 10,000, then you would get an exception error. Page at a time, of course, is for an unlimited number of records to be displayed. We'll leave it at load all for the moment. These other actions here, you can optionally choose to view or edit or add a record. That brings up a separate record format that allows you to modify the records from the subfile. Now, this option here is interesting. At the moment, all of these options here are used the same record format, but you can choose optionally to have separate screens. So the view functionality will be on a record format of its own, edit, add. This is useful if you want to have different functionality. For example, on the add screen, you want to limit the fields the person can add, the user can add. We'll leave it at one combined at the moment just to keep it simple. So the language, here are the languages. Obviously PHP is in a separate demo. RPG free, all specs is for technology release 7, where the H, the F and the D specs are also free. This option is for the more traditional free format in v601 and v701. We'll go the modern route here and select all specs. So here is are the different templates we can have for our screen. So standard is the one we ship for a standard desktop application. Mobile is designed for a mobile. We'll select standard at the moment. That's easy to see in a desktop. Now this field here is for the database file. Our database file is called prodp. And so, well, where is this prodp file? It's actually in the library list brought up by this dialog here. So these two libraries are in my library list. So where does this come from? How do you access this? Well, if you're familiar with the Visual Designer, you'll notice that this has a library list option as well, and it's the same library list used in the Visual Designer. So that's where it comes from. You can either change it here or you can change it back here. It's the same library. Now if you wanted to hard code the library name by qualifying it here, you can, but here's a warning message. If you qualify the library name here, your program will be qualified the same and the library will be hard coded in your program. Usually that's not desirable. So the best option is to leave the library unqualified and use the library list to find the file. Type in the application name. I'm going to call this product maintenance. So when I retrieve the fields, it'll go and pull all the fields out of our prodp file and display them below. So here we go. So basically this is a list of all the fields in the file. Here's the description of the fields it pulled, the length and type of each field, and whether it's a primary key or not. So from here we can select which fields we want to display in the various screens. So the subfile grid, we could say we want to select these fields, maybe the specials flag. In the application there's also a search box that can search through to find a record. You can decide which field we're going to search on, maybe those two, and then which fields we want to display on the detail screen. That's the view, edit, add or delete screen. Now if we had selected multiple screens here or separate screens for each of these functionalities or options, when we retrieve it, you can notice that we can choose which field is displayed on the view screen, which is displayed on the edit screen, and which on the add screen. So this is more flexibility if you choose that option. You also notice on the edit screen you can choose whether you can edit or have a read only. So obviously this is a key field, the primary key, PRID, so this is automatically checked to read only, which is normally the case. So let's go ahead and set this up. I think we'll check that. For the search, we'll have ID, name. For the view, we'll leave all. The edit, we'll leave all. For the add screen, these historical fields, sales this year, sales last year, I think we should leave those blank, and we'll uncheck those for the add screen, so the user can't add those values when it creates a record. These fields here, we can change these if we like. We can change that to retail, and these will be the labels on the application. Okay, so we need to put the library we're going to create our display file and the program in. That's the library. Where we're going to generate the source, I think we'll call it products R for the program name, and products D for the display file name. So that's it. All we do is click the generate button. This is generating the rich display file and compiling it. This is generating and compiling the RPG program, and the application is generated. So click OK. Let's go and run the application. And here we are. Here's the application we just generated. You can scroll through the records here. This is also automatically added an export to Excel, which is a useful feature in rich display file technology. We can sort by the column headings. Now this is a load all subfile, so this sort is done in the browser. There's no RPG coding required for this. We can sort or search for a field. That brings up all the fields containing 16 either in the description or 16 in the ID. We can view a record. Here's all our fields. Edit a record. You notice that the ID is read only. We have our historical fields here, of course, but if we add a record, these historical fields are missing. We chose not to allow those to be entered in the add record. So we could look at this. I notice this is a little bit compressed here. We can actually then go and modify the display file, or the program for that matter, that we've generated. So you notice back here, back on JumpStart, right at the very bottom, it's got a link to open the display file, this products D, in the rich display file editor called the Visual Designer. Now we could either just go to the Visual Designer and open it. This is a very quick link to make it quick and easy to bring it up. So here's our rich display file that generated. Let's just drag that a little bit, make it a bit wider. You can do any other changes, of course. Maybe for this, I want to call that quit instead of exit. Any changes required, either minimally or major, you can change and recompile it. So let's recompile that display file. And let's go back and exit out and run this again. So here we go. It's called quit, and we've got a little wider subfile here. Okay, well, let's go back to JumpStart and see what the page at a time subfile is. So I can go up to the top, select page at a time, and that's about all I need to do. I just need to go and generate the application again. Application generated. Let's go and run that. Let's just quit out of here, run the new version. So here we go. Here's our page at a time subfile. We've got the next and previous with the page number automatically generated. In this case, you also notice that we can still you can still sort by clicking on the column headers. Now, this is a page at a time subfile. There could be hundreds of thousands of records, so the search has to be done by the program. So we've actually embedded embedded SQL into the RPG program to actually perform the sort exactly the same way as it does in a load all. So that's a very useful feature as well. Okay, so what if we wanted to make a permanent change? So for example, here's a load all subfile. This has got 15 rows generated in the subfile. We saw how in the Visual Designer we could go and change an application or a display file after it was generated, but we can actually change the template and permanently change it so all subfiles will have a different number of rows. So for example, 20 rows might be more suitable for what we're generating. So let's see how we can go and do that. So the templates are stored in a folder, www Profound UI. Here's the folder called JumpStart. And you can see standard JSON is the display file template, and standard RPG is the RPG program template. Now we can actually open this in the Visual Designer and change the template, and therefore it'll change all other applications generated in JumpStart using that template. So back to the Visual Designer, let me just clear this out. I can go open, and it'll be an IFS file. It's www Profound UI JumpStart. I can list the files here, and it's the standard one we've been using. Let's select that and open. So here's our template. So this is not a display file that's been generated. This is the master template for all display files using the standard template. You can see obviously there's only a couple of fields, and the field names are displayed here. So there are actually 15 rows here in our subfile. In the rich display file, select that. The number of rows, let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, the number of rows here includes the header. So if we want 20 rows, we need to change this to 21, 21 including the header. And then, of course, we need to go and change our program, RPG program, to change that to 20. So let's bring up our RPG editor. Here's our program that we generated here. Now we can't modify this. This is a generated program. It's the easiest way though is to look at here and see what field we want to change. So I can see here, here's our rows per page, and it's set to 14. We want to change that to 20. Now obviously if I change it here, this is the one program called products R. That's no use, but it's a useful way to look at what's generated to see how to change it. So we need to change this not here, but back on the IFS. Now I've got a map drive here. I can actually modify this with Notepad, for example. But let me, I can right click. I've got an application called Notepad++, which is nice and easy to use. Let me search for rows per page. And here it is here, INZ 14, I'll make that 20. Now this is a fixed format DSpec. We also have the definition for free format as well. So I need to find that again. Here's INZ 14, change that to 20. So we need to change in both areas depending whether we select fixed or free DSpecs. Now we need to save this, but I want to save it as a different template name. Standard is the template we ship with the product, and we might update that from time to time. If we need to go save as, we could call it standard, maybe call it long, something like that for long subfile. And I need to do the same for our Visual Designer. Let me just pull this up here. I didn't actually save this. I need to go save as well. And of call it standard long. Okay, so now if I go back to JumpStart, I think I'll need to refresh the page because that won't appear. Let me just refresh it. Now you see we've got standard long. So if I select standard long, retrieve the fields, I think I'll leave these as is. This is a page at a time we want, and generate. There we go. So let's exit out here and let's run this new version. And here we go. So this is generated automatically 20 rows in our subfile using the standard long template we created, and every other application we generate using that modified template will now permanently add 20 rows to the subfile. So I hope this has been very helpful. There's more documentation for JumpStart. The best place to get to it is from here on the welcome page to explain how to modify the templates, how the RPG template particularly has a number of keywords in there, or controls to decide which format is output, etc. So that's useful in the future. But I hope this has been a helpful demonstration of JumpStart.